Thank you, conference. I am delighted to be addressing you today as the Liberal Democrat new spokesperson for Foreign Affairs and International Aid. I would like to start by thanking my good friend Alistair Carmichael for everything that he has done and will continue to do to champion human rights across the world. And of course, thanks is due to Wendy Chamberlain too for her tireless efforts in protecting UK aid. Now, I'm of course sad to be leaving my role as education spokesperson. I spent my career before becoming an MP as a teacher. But once a teacher, always a teacher, and every day is a learning day. So I look forward to this new challenge. In this role, I will be able to use another side of my past. You see, I, like many of you, am a citizen of the world. As Theresa May cack-handedly called it, a citizen of nowhere, well, I never agreed. I preferred citizen of everywhere. I was born in Hammersmith, but when I was one, my British father took me and my Palestinian mother to Brussels, where he started his career as an EU official. His job took us to Ethiopia, Greece, Jamaica, Jordan, and Egypt. My childhood was spent with a front row seat observing aid projects, attending diplomatic dinners, and even sitting in on trade discussions. And from the back of the room, I'd listen and I'd observe how politics across the world would play out on the ground in the incredible countries that we lived in. And which was my favorite, you ask? Well, I can't answer that question, because every single one left an indelible mark on me and how I see the world. From Ethiopia, through 6-year-old eyes, I watched as military parades and tanks and soldiers would filter by our house almost daily, a reminder to that country of the power of that dreadful dictator Mengistu, who presided over the catastrophic famine made famous by Live Aid. And I remember meeting those children, my age, who had nothing. And to this day, I will never forget them. And that is why I care so deeply about our country's commitment to 0.7% of gross national income going on aid. And that's why I am driven to tackle poverty and stand up for the powerless anywhere in the world. Perhaps had I been born to different parents, I could have been them. We give aid, not just because it's in our enlightened self-interest, but because it is the right thing to do. From Jordan, I got to better understand my own heritage. My mother's family are from Jerusalem. We're an old Greek Orthodox family with a long, proud history of living within the city walls. I got to know my cousins and my mother's school friends as the family moved to Amman when my mother was in her teens. And by this time, I was a teenager. And I got a glimpse into the incredibly complex politics of the Middle East. I am proud to be the first ever British Palestinian MP. I am proud to speak about my family's history in the context of peace and to press for recognition of Palestine by this country. Self-determination is not a carrot or a stick for the US or the UK to use to their own ends. For me and my family, it's personal. It speaks to a deeper sense of being recognized to simply have the right to exist. And that is the approach that I take to this brief. That like all politics, it's always personal to someone. Reading the news today, and certainly over the last weeks and months, you would be forgiven for thinking that the UK's place on the world stage has been utterly undermined and that it's beyond repair. We have a Tory government that is considering scrapping our spending commitments on aid. It's turning a blind eye to human rights atrocities abroad and flouting international law. And I don't care if it's in a limited and specific way. Breaking the law is breaking the law. The Liberal Democrats will always stand with the oppressed and the marginalised across the globe as the most international party in Parliament today. Human rights, equality, and the rule of law are at the heart of who we are as a party. Those values are at our core. And just look at our legacy. I'm so proud that it was our party who enshrined 0.7% UK aid spending into law. And now global Britain, under the Tories, is abandoning its place on the world stage. The Tories' mask has slipped. To them, it's all about Brexit and jingoistic nationalist pride. To us, it is so much more. This year marks 50 years since the Liberal Party, as it was then, became the first political party in the UK to adopt the gross national income spending policy at its party's conference, helping to lift people out of poverty, tackling some of the most deadly diseases and enhancing the lives of children across the world. The commitment does vital work and helps the most vulnerable and transforms lives. I cannot believe that the Chancellor is even considering reneging on that pledge in the upcoming spending review. And with the merging of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office with the Department for International Development, the government is sending entirely the wrong message. With illnesses like COVID-19, no one is free from it, until everyone is free from it. Our world is more connected than ever before, and to pretend that we can tackle the virus at home without doing the same abroad is beyond ignorant. Our response is only as strong as the weakest healthcare system. And of course, we cannot forget the biggest issue, threatening our species, our very existence: climate change. To withhold aid now is not only morally wrong, it is against our own interests too. And that's why I'm working with MPs across Parliament to urge Rishi Sunak to take this threat off the table. We shouldn't be going backwards from 0.7%. In fact, I would like our party to explore going up to 1% and using the extra 0.3% to help tackle climate change abroad. Helping the poorest. That is what it means to me to say global Britain. The Tories, I'm ashamed of what they're doing in our name. Now, the Tory shenanigans over the Northern Ireland Protocol in the withdrawal agreement have fundamentally undermined trust in our nation. It used to be that you could trust the UK to do as it promised. Our word was our bond, our integrity beyond reproach. No more. And this matters. Because how can we expect countries like Russia and China to respect the international rule of law when we're not doing it ourselves? The UK has a responsibility to the people of Hong Kong, which is why the Liberal Democrats, led by Alistair Carmichael, introduced a cross-party bill in February to give all the people of Hong Kong the right to live in the UK. And the government's starting to listen. The new security law imposed in Beijing aims to stamp out protests in the name of protecting national security. Well, what we've seen from the Chinese mainland under similar laws is that this is about silencing people, silencing dissent, silencing democracy. How can we as Liberals let this stand? Now is the time for Britain to stand up, to reopen BNO passport offer, to give it to more Hong Kongers, especially young people who so far have been excluded, and give them the right to live and work in the UK. The Liberal Democrats have always stood with Hong Kong, and we will continue to stand with Hong Kong. And now is the time for the government to stand up and join us. But of course, it is not just Hong Kong where China's repression and brutality are laid bare for all to see. Because what is happening to the Uyghur population in Xinjiang province is nothing short of genocide. Detailed reports showing that more than 1 million people are being kept in so-called re-education camps in the region. But that's not all. We have physical abuse, squalid conditions, denouncement of their Islamic faith, forced sterilizations and abortions. The UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide includes in its definition causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of that group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within that group. Genocide is a strong word, but to me it's clear. They are engineering a genocide. And the world is looking to the UK and the international community to stand up and take action. And I wonder, has Dominic Raab not seen the footage of people being led off trains to internment camps? I simply don't believe that he hasn't. Which begs the question, why is he ignoring it? Why aren't we automatically granting refugee status to the Uyghurs fleeing persecution? What does global Britain mean if not that? To me, it means open arms. It means leading on the world stage and taking a firm action against hatred and repression wherever it exists, not turning a blind eye. The Chinese Communist Party must be held to account. But we all have our part to play. As consumers, we have a responsibility in the products we buy and the companies we support to make sure that we aren't inadvertently helping them in perpetrating those human rights abuses. Any company selling products produced in the labour camps should not receive our support. And in fact, I call on our government to ban the sale of those products immediately. And I'm sure many of you, perhaps with kids, might have seen Disney's new film Mulan, but did you know that it was marred in controversy due to its ties to those atrocities? Now, Disney is quite rightly feeling the heat, and so is Huawei, following reports that it developed a monitoring system being used in the camps. And then there is TikTok, which allegedly removed a teen's viral video about the repression of the Uyghurs. ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, also stands accused of working with the Chinese state to censor and monitor the Uyghurs. This is about transparency as much as anything else. A cutesy dance video may seem at first innocuous until you realize that your money, or in this case your data being used to make money, is supporting a company that stands accused of helping to repress human rights in other countries. The onus is on TikTok to prove that this is not the case. But until then, as consumers, we have choices to make. And while we can all do our bit, there is, of course, the need now for the UK government to take a much firmer stance, to take action and show that we will not accept what is being done to the Uyghurs. The government must do the right thing and act quickly. This includes using Magnitsky-style sanctions against state and non-state individuals who are involved in implementing these clear violations of human rights. The Lib Dems, along with colleagues across the political spectrum, are calling for the independent UN investigation and the High Commissioner for Human Rights to be allowed to freely enter Xinjiang. And if we allow these companies to move their operations to the UK, or we fail to take the security threat seriously, we are tacitly accepting that repression, re-education, sterilization, and other inhumane abuses are okay. And it is not okay. So Dominic Raab, pull your finger out. You will find support across Parliament. Freeze dirty money and assets held in the UK and send a clear message. Global Britain will not tolerate this. Or is Global Britain just a branding exercise after all? Well, so far I've dwelled a lot on China, and there is so much more that we need to fight for. In Belarus, people's democratic rights and freedoms are being crushed with Putin's help. Those responsible for these heinous acts must not feel that the UK is a haven for their dirty assets, and I welcome the sanctions that the government announced this Thursday, although they should have come sooner. Civilians in Yemen are being killed by bombs, arms and equipment that we have sold to Saudi Arabia. How can this government look itself in the eye? And of course, we mustn't forget the atrocities committed against the Rohingyas in Myanmar. And I've nearly reached the end of a foreign policy speech without mentioning Donald Trump. Well, let me tell you, there will be no one happier to see the back of him in November than me, and I'm sure you all agree. Just take this so-called peace deal in the Middle East. It's a sham. Excluding the Palestinian people from any settlement undermines any chance of stability. This is another perfect example of the much-hyped global Britain hiding from its historic responsibilities and letting others fill the political vacuum. Make no mistake, Donald Trump doesn't care about peace. He cares about being re-elected. Britain should be stepping up to the plate in the Middle East, and instead it is hiding away. And its job is now that much more difficult now that we've left the European Union. To the Tories, I'm afraid global Britain means one-upmanship, brinksmanship, and playing economic games with people's lives. That is not the liberal vision for a global Britain. We must set the example. No other party is going to. My litmus test will be to look in the face of those 6-year-old children that I met 30 years ago and say, together, we helped to make the world a better place. Our liberal vision means that we want the UK to take a leading role globally in standing up to repression, genocide and hatred wherever it appears, to fight against poverty and for human rights, social justice and the international rule of law. We can make our values shine brightly for everyone to see. As a party, we have never been afraid to lead from the front when it comes to Britain's place in the world. And that is not about to change. Thank you.